Dr. Amanda Steffen, otherwise known as the Senior Pet Vet, shares how her soul dog, Floyd, battling brain tumor, dementia, and arthritis, transformed her approach to senior care and ignited her passion for earlier intervention. This is her origin story.
This is the most relaxing interview I've ever had.
I like it. Just don't think about it being stairs and it's all good.
Hey everyone, Dr. T here. I'm with Amanda Steffen, otherwise known as the Senior Pet Vet. And we're gonna talk about senior wellness, but we're also gonna talk about her because it's very important that I love to have the origin story. I want to know how you got into vet med, and then what things led. I have a little bit of an idea, what things led to your passion for senior wellness.
Yeah. So I think the vet med story is fairly basic. I was like the little kid who loved playing with animals.
Always
and
wanted to be a vet, right?
Always doctored all my animals.
Okay.
My poor animals got like popsicle sticks taped to their legs and things like that. So I was just a kid who never grew out of it. It was the one thing I wanted to do. So it was kind of nice because I just kind of followed that trail all the way through. And then senior vet med definitely was a mixture of, when I came out, it was always something that I enjoyed. I enjoyed like the senior pets and their just calm demeanor, like their just soulfulness. I appreciated all of that. And then having senior pets. So I had a senior chow and she lived to be 17.
Wow.
Yeah. She had oral melanoma cancer.
Wow.
And so, learning a lot from her and going through all of that with her, cancer treatment, and then, dementia and all of those things. And that was my first real world experience with that. And then my heart dog, Floyd, who most of my business is named after and goes for, it was like the dog who, took my soul and was my heart. And he just was the happiest. I say he had more friends than I did. He was the life of the party. And he just embodied everything you would want to be, like in a person.
Cool.
And when he got sick, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't really know how to help him. He had a brain tumor, he had dementia, he had arthritis. And when you have a brain tumor and you have dementia, which one's causing your symptoms, So I felt fairly alone, and then we did chemo, and, I don't think it gave us any more time. So it was hard to be in that place, and then you kind of feel like you're alone. And I feel if I was alone as a veterinarian, how does everyone else feel? And, knowing these symptoms earlier makes me feel like it could have been a different story, So, and then Western leading into Eastern medicine, I started to take acupuncture classes because I felt like there were places where we got to the point where we said, there's not much we can do in Western medicine. And I don't like that answer. So I went to Eastern medicine and learned there's a lot of ways I can continue to help and give people hope from that more integrative standpoint of things. So it's been really amazing to bring all that together.
Wow. Okay, so you talked about your journey dealing with the senior pet, going through all these senior and then the percentage risk of cancer episodes. So what sort of advice do you give clients? So they've got a puppy or they've got a kitten. What sort of advice do you get them to prepare for those moments beyond middle age, beyond senior? What sort of advice would you give from as far as supplements, everything like that? What would you recommend?
Yeah, I think that when we get a puppy or we get a kitten, right? You go to the vet every 3 weeks for the first 6 months. You go to a class, you read a book, you do all this stuff, and then they hit 7 to 10 years old and nothing changes. And that, I think, needs to change because if we change how we take care of them as they enter their seniorhood and start to have some changes, we're gonna make them live longer and they're gonna be more comfortable, right? So a lot of dogs and cats, 90% of cats live in chronic pain, of senior cats, and only 12% of those ever get treatment for arthritis. It's insane. And
12% of the 50% that show up for the appointment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's crazy that, and people don't know because they're so subtle about it. They're not going to limp or cry or anything like that. They just learn to compensate and they don't do the things that they used to do. They don't jump 10 feet onto the counter anymore. They jump like to the stair and then to the counter. Dogs are gonna hesitate with the stairs, but they're not going to stop going up them most of the time. So it's picking up on those subtle things, but I think there needs to be an aspect of truly having more education, which is what I hope to do on my social medias and things like that, is give that education and just that awareness. And like, seniorhood is not a bad word. It's not this like terrible word that, you know, a lot of people get scared and they're like, oh, no, my dog can't be a senior or my cat can't be a senior. And it's like, that's okay. They can live over half their life in seniorhood. That is perfectly fine. Cats become seniors at 10. I've seen 25-year-old cats. They are crazy. So being more prepared and able to take care of them better doesn't mean that we're like giving up or doing a countdown or anything like that. I think it's just very important for us to know that their needs change and to accommodate our life and our home and those types of things. I think a lot of times we look for like the supplements or the things to do, and a lot of it's very simple. It's like making sure there's traction on your floor, making sure if they have those fluffy toes that they're trimmed, making sure that they have a orthopedic bed, you know, making sure that they have the home set up in a way that works for them. It's not that expensive, it's not that complicated, you know, you don't need all that stuff. A lot of it's very simple.
What role do you think diet plays in senior health?
Yeah, there's a study, and a lot of veterinarians quote this now, like a couple years ago, where there's dogs who are overweight live usually at 2 years less than dogs who are an ideal weight. There's a huge aspect of weight. Arthritis happens in 80 to 90%, 80% of dogs, 90% of cats, right? So if we're talking about extra weight on those joints, that's gonna make them even more uncomfortable. So, and there's a lot of different aspects of it, but insulin resistance worsens, they get this like chronic inflammation state of the body and everything like that. So I think there's a lot that goes into, it's very easy, I would not say easy, I guess, but it's something that we can do that is not gonna cost us a lot of money to just be able to change their diet or decrease how much they're getting and make sure we're feeding them appropriately. And it's gonna make them feel so much better. And then you'll have less need for medications and for supplements and for all these additional very expensive modalities if we can just keep them at an ideal weight.
Excellent.
Sometimes a pet can change everything. Floyd reshaped how Dr. Stefan approaches senior care, and maybe how we should too. Let's keep going. Aging isn't decline, it's preparation. And the earlier we prepare, the better they live. Thanks for listening. And if you want to hear more, stay tuned for the next segment.